Too Black, if you're talking, you're on mute. So you're not introducing yourself to nobody right now.
Yeah. All right.
Black, if
Can
you're talking.
everybody hear me? All right, good. All right, we have a few technical difficulties, but we're here. So I am Too Black. For those who are on RBN, like, why is this nigga on my screen right now? We're representing Black Power Media. So to my left is Kamal. We're here to talk about the Pendleton 2 case, and then we're here joining Revolutionary Blackout Network. So I'll let Kamal introduce himself, and then Nick, you can introduce yourself to BPM. Look like I'm getting a feedback somewhere.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So really quickly, Kamal Franklin, grassroots organizer with Community Movement Builders, former practicing attorney a long time ago, general jokester. It's really good to be on with you, both of you, and to do this simulcast with our brothers and sisters. I know we took a little bit to get that going, but I'm glad we worked it out and got it going on. So Revolutionary Black Network is a pleasure to share space with y'all as always. And yeah, that's about it. As always.
Yes, can you guys hear me? Yeah, I'm Nick, Social 7A. Sorry, I have some tech issues. Hopefully we can work through it. But I'm glad to do this collaboration stream. It's something I've been looking forward to a long time. We did a I Am Revolution segment on Mumia, and I love the work that you guys do on Black Power Media. You guys covered that as well, and you guys coverage on political prisoners. It's something that we're definitely going to continue to focus on. Learn a lot from you guys as well. So I'm looking forward to this collaboration. Oh, you muted.
Yeah, somebody's got feedback on there.
I think that might be Nick because when he was talking, it came out, and if I don't hear it now, and he put himself on mute.
Damn, hold up.
But I could be guessing.
Yeah, it might be the two streams, but it's all good.
Does it work when I'm mute?
Say that again.
Does it work?
I don't think there's no feedback when you're on mute. I think it's only when you come off.
Yeah.
What I can tell right now. So right now I don't hear any feedback. But it's a minimal disturbance. So
yeah,
just let you know.
All right.
I apologize, guys. Let's see if I can fix that somehow.
No, that's all good. So to get into it, we're here to talk about the Pendleton 2. But first, before we get to Pendleton 2, I think we just need to clarify what political prisoners are for those who don't understand. I think it's just always important to do this. I think Kamal can explain this better than I can, so I'm going to pass it to Kamal to do that because he's been doing this work longer than both of us combined. So go ahead.
So I appreciate you calling me old. So the general definition that is used, obviously it's an international definition, is that a political prisoner is someone who is arrested, detained, convicted, held because of their political beliefs. And so whether or not they were engaged in any particular action at the time of the detention, it doesn't matter. But what really is important is the political beliefs that they hold. Further, political prisoners can be developed after they are arrested, detained, and or held. And so people who develop particular politics that they espouse that the state is opposed to, if they can show that the reason why they would either they have a longer sentence, they're not granted parole, they've gotten extra time, they've been put in the box and other things and deserve and gotten extra punishment. Those folks too, under the Geneva Convention, qualifies political prisoners. And so we have a range. I'll quickly wrap up of folks that we know. We look at our own history in terms of the Black liberation struggle from the 60s and 70s in particular. I'll hit on. We have many Black Panther Party members who are arrested, convicted, and jailed, and others, of course, for their political beliefs. And you have others who were convicted for their political actions, which still would make them political prisoners. And you've had others like George Jackson, of course, who is probably the most famous and or infamous, depending on who you ask, who was considered a political prisoner after he was detained because his sentence, what he was detained for, arrested for, convicted for, was considered to be such a light offense, even though his sentence was heavy. He was never granted parole, and in fact, obviously, was assassinated in prison because of his political work, his political beliefs, and the things that he espoused.
All right, thank you for that. like you said, a lot of the times the way people come to understand political prisoners is often through the Panther Party. That's the ones we've come to know most famously. They either had an affiliation or they were just flat out members of the Panther Party. But there are other political prisoners too, and I think sometimes I don't think it's on purpose. I think it's just because those are the people we know those are the stories that get lifted up. So today we want to talk about two individuals who weren't, to my knowledge, a part of anything related to the Panthers. Their story really happens after the Panthers had declined in 1985. So talking about John C. Cole and Christopher Trotter, Christopher Naeem Trotter, and then John Balagoon Cole. So you're gonna hear me refer to them as Naeem and Balagoon, but those are their full names. And before we explain this story, I just want because we're really doing this because we need signatures for these two individuals because they're trying to fight their cases right now. So I just want people to look in the show notes.
Yeah, and I have the link in the description. If you're watching this on the RBN side, if you want to read we're going to obviously explain the story, what happened. But I got a link in there as well if you want to click and read it. And also I got to click the link for the signatures because it's very important to raise awareness and have action for that. So make sure you guys click and sign to show support. Sorry, Two Black. Go ahead. I just want to.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and same thing for BPM.
And I'm gonna interrupt Two Black also and say, can somebody get the link and drop it in the chat also? It's another way for folks who are watching to.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
But yeah, so and it's an easy. I'll actually share my screen real quick just so this is very simple for people if I can. Because I just want people to be able to go over this fairly easy. 1 second here. Actually, I'll do that towards the end because it's not pulling up correctly. But it's a form. You literally just put your name and your email address and a few other, and it goes out, and we send it to the necessary party. So we'll send it to the prosecutor in that county, and we're also sending it to the governor, and we're going to start sending letters as well to media to get more attention to. So we're just dropping off letters to them. Yeah, there it is. Come out. Thank you. So it's like real simple to fill out. So just want to let y'all know that before we get into the story, because once we get in, we're going to stay in and we'll try to remind you to fill it out. And also we will be hearing from one of the Pendletons who Naeem will be calling in soon. So we got to get through this story pretty quickly. So to explain it, this is a situation happening in Indiana where I'm based. This happened in Pendleton, Indiana, in what is now called the Pendleton Prison. At the time, it was called Indiana Reformatory Correctional Facility. And there was a white supremacist guard gang by the name of the Sons of Light that was running the prison. And this is documented. We actually have a deposition of one of the guards who worked there at the time who admitted that that's what was happening. And that he said the guards' children used to play with Klan robes. So they were a KK splinter group. So they ran the prison at the time. So there had been incidents up to this point. But on February 1st, 1985, Lincoln Love, otherwise known as Lokmar, was in the maximum restraint unit. And the guards claimed that they were, tossing cells. And they had already tossed cells. And they came into his cell. And they didn't simply just toss his cell. They handcuffed him, tear gassed him, and beat him with the illegal billy club, damn near to death. Then dragged him out of his cell, face down, and took him into the captain's room. And everybody thought that they were going to kill him because, again, these kind of incidents happened regularly at this prison. This was not an isolated story or something that just happened on a whim. That's just not how this works. So Balagoon and Naeem were the leaders of a political group inside the prison called the Black Dragons, and a lot of times political groups get pushed as like gangs, but this was not a gang. This was a group that was there to help organize prisoners against the racist guards, and also to stop infighting amongst the guards. So initially, the prisoners who saw this occur, they yelled to go get Balagoon because they understood these were advocates for prison. They were also jailhouse lawyers, and they were lay advocates within this prison at the time. So they were always advocating for prisoners. So they go get Balagoon go get Naeem, and then they bring several other gentlemen with them. They try to go to the captain's office initially peacefully to check to see what's going on because they thought he was going to get killed. as they try to like intervene, no one would let them see him. Again, we're talking about Lokmar, and they say he's behind this curtain, still bleeding, probably dying at this point. So they try to force their way in, and then they get attacked. Once they get attacked, then reinforcements gets called. They find out, and I'm speeding this story up because this is much longer. But once they find out that Lokmar is actually in another location, they go to that location. They get surrounded by guards. The order was to kill them. They heard this, as well as to kill Lokmar. So that in self-defense, they fought off the guards. Um, the guards had they had knives. The guards had a shotgun, billy clubs, mace, anything you could think of. They took a few of the guards hostage because they were surrounded, and they took over Cell House J. They did not. No one died in this incident. This is another reason why the sentence is so ridiculous. They took a few guards hostage and a few other folks who were visiting the prison at the time that worked for the administration. They occupied Cell House J in this prison for about 15 hours, and they had a series of demands, whether it was addressing the unsanitary conditions that many of them lived in. Because going back to the initial situation with Lincoln Love, they were protesting because they weren't getting cleaning supplies. So for anyone out there, imagine if you just don't have soap, you just can't brush your teeth, you just can't access these things, and this is just a normal occurrence on the day to day. So they again, coming back to when they're in the cell house, they called the media and called the Indiana media. People subsumed to the location. They put out their demands. One of the demands was no reprisals, no violent reprisals for what they had done. And then after this occurs, they go to trial. Balagoon and Naeem receive 84 and 142 years respectively. In trial, none of the evidence about the racism that had occurred inside the prison was allowed into evidence. If you read the transcripts, none of it was allowed into evidence. The judge and the prosecutor openly fraternized with the jury. And anytime they tried to speak to the state of mind or why they felt motivated to try to save Lincoln Love, who did not die in this incident either, only because of them, it was constantly denied. And then they were sentenced to 142 years, or 84 and 142 years. Balagoon spent 32 years, to my knowledge, in solitary confinement, and Naeem spent 20 years in solitary confinement, and they're still locked up today. Naeem tried to get his sentence vacated, and actually a judge did vacate it in 2018, but then that judge was moved from the bench by the county, and then they put in a new judge who resentenced him to 122 years. And essentially he says, quote, I have to look out for my brothers. Right. That's what he says about the so-called IDOC, the Indiana Department of Corrections. So that's what we're up against. And anyone who has knows the history of Indiana. Go ahead.
Can I just add this too? Because you mentioned this as well, and I was reading this up when I was researching the story. It's pretty crazy how they had these people in solitary confinement for decades.
Yeah.
And I want you guys to understand, solitary confinement is torture. And the police had lied, and experts had lied to us about the mental effects that can have on prisoners. And when I hear this story, like CJ talk about the trauma in our community all the time, like this is white supremacy. This is the police state retaliating against our community. This is them using their institution to cause pain. And this is kind of stuff that made me like, I'm ready for a revolution, because how do you fix this? Like, how do you fix this? Like, right. Even if we can get these people free, that's still decades of their life that is lost. And God knows how many other people are out there that this justice system has screwed over, because the connection between the KKK and a lot of the white supremacist group, correct me if I'm wrong, was established pretty recently. So it's like, it seems like under this white supremacist criminal justice system, they can do what they want. And that's why I personally think revolution is the only way to stop this kind of stuff from happening. But I just want to add that. Go ahead, back in comment.
No, I appreciate it for highlighting that. And just to continue with the case, just recently, just like as in the last few weeks, is why we kind of rushed to do this. Because Naeem had been trying to get his sentence modified again, and he actually was trying to get the initial judge that had vacated the sentence. He was trying to get him to rehear the case, and We don't actually know the full story as of right now, but something was released on the docket saying that his modification was denied, but there's no signature on it. So we don't even know what judge signed off. Like, we're currently trying to figure that out. So that's one of the reasons why we're trying to get these letters and send them to the office to force them or pressure them to respond, because we don't actually know who signed off on saying his case cannot be heard at this point. Like, his appeal has been denied once again. But you're supposed, I mean, Kamal could speak to this on the legal side. Someone's supposed to sign off on this, but nobody signed off on it as of now. So we're trying to apply pressure.
Yeah, no, when I hear about this case, and I've heard about this case, the thing that reminds me the most of is when I think about Attica a little bit. When you have prisoners who, because of the conditions that they lived under, the lies that they were leading, the things that they were again, so-called social prisoners who were impacted by circumstances within the places that they were held, and then they had no choice but to act. And what the state does is that the state decides to move on these people, and the state decides that anything that they do to fight back is too much. And anything that they do to fight back is criminalized. And in essence, what they're trying to do is to tell the next prisoner and the next person that if you do this, this is what you're going to happen. So that's why something like this is extremely important, because we have to show the support that we can garner for these folks, so that folks know that they're not isolated, they're not alone, that they have family, they have comrades, they have folks who are looking out for them. And then similarly, like, folks like this will get moved around from prison to prison to prison. Again, being housed in SHU units for literally decades. They'll get other infractions that will make their life hurt. This is anything that can be done to punish them. And then on the legal side is that they're going to just mess with them. So they're going to make their lawyers do more than what you normally will have to do to chase things down, to find out certain information, to move things around, to delay hearings on a whim, and like you said, to deny evidence, which will make you go up the appeal chain. But literally, because of how things work in the United States, that's decades, right? You spend decades, literally, and sometimes dying in prison, trying to show your innocence or trying to show constitutional evidence that should lead to your conviction being overturned. But instead of allowing that in some process that can be considered humane or just, instead what they do is give you the runaround where you spend your entire life trying to get out of a situation that you never should have been placed in the first place.
Yeah, and that's I see all the time, like, liberal news, CNN, MSNBC. I'll see them. They release stories like this every once in a while, where they'll say, black prisoner who was in jail for 45 years finally released, and he's like an old man. And then they
we've just had recent people get out off of that. You know, like recently. I said recently, political prisoners have gotten out off of that. Like, they spend their very last days, like maybe even a year, and then they die. You know, but go ahead. I was just at that point. Like, that has just happened. Go ahead, Nick. That has just happened.
Yeah, and I always think it's weird, and I think we should always fight for this kind of justice. But I always find it weird when people celebrate that as good news. I think that's a condemnation of the system that I don't understand why people will allow to uphold itself. But I'll pass it back to you, to Black and Kamu. Also, make sure, I saw we have quite a few more people watching on RBN. If you missed it, what I said in the beginning, please check the link down in the description. Even if you join late and you missed what story, you can click that and you can read, and also you can add your signature to that as well, because that's how we really got to bring support to these people. So I got the link in the description. If you're on the RBN side, make sure you click that link and add your signature, because I like me and CJ, we talk about these stories. It's really traumatic. Like, it really makes me sad, but it's something that we must talk about. So I'm glad you raise awareness on that. Go ahead, Black.
No, when I heard about it, I mean, I think the person that told me is in the comments. I think Nick and Coco had told me about this, but you know, it was in my state, and I was ashamed. I've always tell people I was ashamed I didn't know, you know, because this happened in 1985. This happened before I was alive, so this has been going on, you know, for a while. And I think I try to research to see how much had been written. There's been little parenthetical notes here and there and pieces, but no one had ever really done a deep investigation other than IDOC Watch, which is one of the organizations that brought this to attention. Shout out to them. But other than that and a few others, there hadn't really been any deep investigation, and even that is fairly recent. So, and again, this is not an isolated incident. Even in that prison, or even in Indiana, there was another uprising in 1982 in Michigan City, just a few years prior to the one we're talking about. In the prison that we're talking about, there was guards who had even sued this prison because the conditions were so bad. Even the guards, some of the guards who weren't part of the Klan, felt that they were unsafe because the violence was so bad that it had all the prisoners on edge. And you're already on edge in prison anyway. So even they, even though I'm not defending them, even they felt like this was bad just because of the conditions were what they were. And I think for all the talk about racial justice and all the shit that goes on today, these people, are suffering the worst because there's no cameras, definitely. there's no real visual what occurs. And you hear stories about prisoners get experimented on and everything else. And we really just kind of shrug, even though most of us, particularly if you're black or poor, you have people in your family who are in prison. More than likely, it's like almost impossible to not know somebody who served time. I know I do. So I think it's just something we need to advocate for in general, because there's political prisoners and then there's just the general conditions of prison anyway. Like there's something, we talk about medical neglect. I mean, again, to speak to even these two gentlemen, these are older gentlemen now because they've been locked up for over 40 years. One at Balagoon just had an incident just a few months ago, where we had to do a phone zap because he had a seizure and we couldn't get information from the prison about what happened. We thought we were going to lose him. And so we had a phone zap, for people that don't know, is when you get online, have a bunch of people call the prison to demand some kind of information to the family because they wouldn't give the family any information so we can know what was going on. Like, this is a regular occurrence. And like Kamal said, particularly political prisoners are going to have to pay more than even prisoners who already get mistreated, you know. And then we come back to medical neglect. Lincoln Love, the person who was beat down and saved in this story, eventually dies in 2020 to COVID. Which is, again, another form of medical neglect, because prisons are not looking out for, they're not looking out for these folks. Like, the most minimal thing they can do, they will do, to check on their health. They're not about to be out here like asking, do you need a checkup, other than when it's required. And even then, they'll basically be like, if you're dying. I've even heard prisoners say they would make themselves bleed just to get some kind of attention. Like, they knew they had to almost like allow themselves to damn near die just to get medical attention. Like, it's not enough to just be like, my shoulder's bothering me, like, I'm gonna go to the doctor. Like, it's not enough. So when people complain, like, prisoners, all they get fed every day, they got health care, like, that's bullshit. That's just bullshit.
Yeah, I was going to say quick, and then it's the worst treatment that you can expect in terms of the medical treatment within the prison system. So not only do they not want to give you treatment, when they give it to you, usually it's terrible treatment at that. Usually it's half measures, and to get you out of the place, to get to a real hospital, you basically have to be having some medical emergency.
Yeah.
And even then, half the time they don't believe you. So there's no one who can think that the conditions in prison, which are basically dungeons, are probably the worst conditions that our people face on an ongoing long-term basis. So part of this, even talking about them as political prisoners, even if it wasn't a politicized case that's led to the extension of the amount of years that they now have to serve in prison, I think the mere fact that these are people who've been locked down and given these years and who are suffering from within, when we talk about the prison industrial complex, this is part of what it does. It grinds you down, and you can die in that prison for all they care. And again, unless you have either family or expert lawyers or expensive lawyers or community behind you, for the most part, no one will hear. Most of us do not hear about the daily deaths that happen all across this country in prisons and jails. Those things don't necessarily reach social media. They don't reach commercial news. You just hear every so often when a case just seems completely outrageous, that is too much to hide. Those cases get you some attention every now and then. but the day-to-day things that can be covered up, that be claimed to be a heart attack or can be claimed to be an extension of something that happened in the prison, those things none of us ever get to hear about. We never know about. They become statistics with unnamed faces. They become statistics about people that no one cares about and no one can do anything about. And so again, even the little publicity that something like this has gotten, still it needs more, right? We need more action on a case like this, not just more social media action, but we have to figure out ways to get it into mainstream media so that we can have folks recognize that this is happening under our noses once again, on an everyday basis once again. And there's something that we have to do about it, because otherwise these folks, as well as others of our folks, will just simply die in prison and no one will care.
Yeah. And I know
you guys saw the story of the prisoners where they had literally signs hanging out. I think one was in Mississippi where they was begging for help because the medical treatment they was getting during the COVID-19 pandemic was so bad, and our corporate media is so horrific when they see prisoners go through inhumane treatment in the prisons. They don't care, so they literally had like signs. A lot of them was going on hunger strike. That's how bad the treatment a lot of these people in prison have, especially in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I love those points you bring up, and that just shows the fact that a lot of people don't even get the right medical care that they need, right? But go ahead, Tupac. I'll pass it back to you.
no, and looks like that y'all can keep talking. They're calling me. This is Naeem, so I just got to set the call up. Y'all can keep talking.
No, I think that's completely true, Nick. Folks just don't understand what you have to do to have conditions, whether medical, physical conditions, dealt with in prison. It damn near calls for people striking and organizing and doing dramatic things to let folks know that they're suffering inside. Because without that, again, the prison authorities are going to ignore you. They're going to claim that you're a troublemaker. Again, they're going to throw you in the shoe. They're going to isolate you. And so that's the kind of thing that happens without dramatic attention given to some of these cases.
Yeah, and the use of solitary confinement, especially in this case, is like that's part like everything about this story is tragic, but that really hurts me hard, and that showed the flaw in our system. There's so many people who are wrongfully in prison, and then sometimes they get thrown in solitary confinement. They say they were doing it for their safety, right? And like I said before, prisons, it's been a giant coordinated push. I know you got your phone call. There's been coordinated push with a lot of people about the fact that solitary confinement. I know you got the call too, but go
Okay,
ahead.
this is Naeem, one of the two Pendleton 2 prisoners who's calling in from prison. So we're gonna give him the floor. If anyone has any questions, ask. Naeem, you still there? All right, great. Can y'all hear it? Can y'all hear?
He's relatively low, so you might have to get him closer.
All right, hold on. What about now? Talk, Naeem.
I just maintain my mental liberty is self-respect, which I just better to me. In other words, just taking it day by day, trying to make the best out of it,
Yeah, definitely. I know you don't have much time, so just want to get into it. This is the first time a lot of people are hearing your case. So what do you want to tell people about this case? We've already explained the story, but you can explain it again.
First of all, black man's justice and black man's free. That's the first thing I want people to understand. That it was a case where I had to choose between my freedom and having a fellow human being. And I chose to do what I felt in my heart of heart was morally the right thing to do. And that was to help someone that needed help. A prisoner was shackled and handcuffed and was stabbed who's still beaten, like racist, prison guards that were part of a clandestine organization called the Sons of Light, which is the offspring of the Ku Klux Klan. So they weren't innocent guards. They were corrupt. They were the worst kind. They were racist. And had I turned my back on that prisoner, I wouldn't have been able to live with myself. And I chose to sacrifice my life to save a life. And we as a people are exactly where we are today by others sacrificing their lives. We stand on the shoulders of Malcolm, Martin Luther King, and the other great heroes of heroes. This case is not tried, it is a political issue. We were judged and convicted by an all-white jury, and the truth was presented for being known. I was sentenced to a perpetual life sentence of 122 years, and no one was killed. Imagine that. No one was killed, and he sentenced me to 122 years. And what's more appalling is the fact that the guards that allegedly did start the riot only served a 3 days in jail.
Hey Naeem, I'm gonna cut in because some of the people are having a hard time hearing you. So I'm gonna repeat what you said. Just stay there with me. So he said he had a choice to for those who could not hear, he had a choice to sacrifice to save a human life. Another thing I don't think I said at the beginning, Naeem only had 3 months left on his sentence, and he still chose to intervene to save a human life. And Balagoon only had about 3.5 years in the sentence. So that's another important point to make. Like, there was definitely things on the line. And he also is talking about how nobody died, but he received 142 years like it was a death sentence. And then he spent time in like we already discussed, he spent 20 years in solitary confinement. So Naeem, what inspired you and your comrades to make that sacrifice?
Again, I've always been an ultimate separate person. Growing up in a abusive household, where I had to protect my mother and my brother. And then also experiencing the brutality firsthand myself by racist prison guards. We did not get involved in that situation, as a form of retaliation.
Right.
The first solution wasn't violent. We were attacked and we defended ourselves. They were trying to cover it up. We were at a place where we were supposed to be. And again, what truly made me stand up that day and make the sacrifice that I made is that I'm a military vet. And I swore to protect this country against foreign and domestic enemies. And we were up against a terrorist organization, the Sons of Light.
Right.
A domestic enemy. And this enemy had an agenda to abuse Black prisoners. And on that day, they were carrying out that agenda. Again, even though I came from an abusive background, my mother and father did install strong morals and values that it's worse to watch a crime take place and not do nothing about it. You know, again, like, had people intervened in the George Floyd situation, he would be alive today. Instead of sitting around filming it, if they would have just stood up and challenged the powers to be, he would have been alive today.
Right.
And a lot of other black men and women would be alive today if people just stood up. Stood up for what was right, what was morally right. And that's what we did. What made me make the sacrifice I made was, it was the right thing to do. Saving the life of another human being at the risk of sacrificing your own life, it's the right thing to do.
Right. I'm gonna play this back again to the people because I don't know how well all of this is coming through. But again, the answer to the question was, you know, he said he was a Marine. He said the job was to defend his country against enemies, both foreign and domestic. And they were dealing with a terrorist organization that we talked about earlier, named the Sons of Light. And those Sons of Light were the so-called prison guards who ran the prison, but they were actually a part of a KKK splinter group. Again, apologize if everybody can't hear this, but if you want to hear a clearer interview on the Black Myths podcast, we talked to Naeem, and it does come through clear for whatever reason it is today. But to continue his answer, they were fighting against a KKK splinter group called the Sons of Light, and and he felt like it was important to stand up, and he feels like if more people and more Black people stood up, then these kind of injustices wouldn't occur. So that's the shorthand answer. Do y'all have any questions y'all want to ask Nick or Kamal?
Well, I want to ask, how is he holding up in terms of knowing that the games that are being played by the court system, but also, is he? Does it help him to know that his case, the case of him and his comrade, is gaining a lot of support, or people are hearing more about it? Does that help him with the sort of the day-to-day of carrying on and trying to continue to seek justice?
Naeem, you still there?
Yeah.
In the comments, if y'all are in the comments, y'all can ask questions too. We'll take those. We got time. But one of the questions was, knowing that there's people out here fighting for you, that there's a campaign, and just your general state, like how are you holding up, and do the people fighting for you out here, does that give you inspiration to keep going?
That gives me great inspiration. I often tell myself, I'm tired of being sick and tired. But it's people like Comrade Two Black, IBOC Watch, my comrade Ben, my comrade Natasha, my comrade Andrea. These people give me the strength to keep fighting, the hope to keep fighting. And if it wasn't for people like them reaching inside this belly of the beast, extending that sense of empathy, that sense of humanity, that sense of blood, that sense of support, I'm going to be honest, I'd have been and gave up. Because sometimes when you're up against such a racist, vindictive system, it will beat you down.
Right.
But every time I've fallen, it's been their hope, their faith, their determination that picks me back up. And I draw strength from that to just keep on fighting, even though I'm tired and I'm worried, but if they're not going to give up on me, I can't give up on myself.
Right.
At the end of the day,
Well, we appreciate you. I want you to know that from out here. Like, you give us inspiration. I always say I don't know how many of us would have made the sacrifice you made. Not you, Balagoon, or the entirety of your crew. I don't know how many of us would have done that. And I think y'all are punished because you're such an example. So I just want you to know that we appreciate y'all.
I just want to let you guys know too as well that I'm getting a ton of chats on the RBN side, almost 100 people watching. So there are a lot of people that are signing that petition. The only real question I have, like, I got a lot of people signing. Is there any other way, any other actions that we can do? Well, that's the only real question I have. My main goal is to try to drive as many people to help as possible. So it's great to hear from you, and your bravery is very inspiring. So that's the only question I really have. I'll pass it back to you, too, Black.
Did you hear that, Naeem?
I heard some of it.
The question was, I mean, we're running again, for people sign the letter, please sign the form. Even if you can't hear very well, please sign the form. We definitely need that. But the question was, is there anything else we can do for you and Balagoon beyond what's currently going on, or do you just want to champion the things we're already doing? The floor is yours to speak on that.
What I would like for us to do is to continue to bring awareness to this situation. And keep in mind that it's not just about me. This is bigger than me. This is way bigger than me. You know, I'm not the only one that's been railroaded by an unjust political system, judicial system. I'm not the only one that's sitting in prison that's been abused by guards. I'm not the only one. So this is bigger than just me and Balagoon. This is also about the abolishment of prisons, the abolishment of this capitalist system that's not designed to meet the needs of the people.
Right.
This is also about building a national coalition that can be part of a bigger movement, that abolishment movement. We want to build a campaign that not just focuses on the injustices inside the prison system, but that focuses on the injustices that take place everywhere. You got an idea? Inside and outside. And I ask people to please get involved with IBOC Watch, contact linktree.com/freedom campaign. Support the fundraiser. Go to fundraiser. That's FUNDRAZR.com. Help free Chris Trotter. Find ways to bring other people into the fold, to share this information with other people, to get other people involved. Because see, today it's me. Tomorrow it may be their son or their daughter sitting in prison telling this story. It's time for everyone to stand up the same way me and Balagoon stood up.
Yeah.
And I just like to thank everyone that's being proactive and been a part of, this campaign to support the liberation of me and Balagoon. I just want to thank everybody. And again, I can't thank enough. I have to say this and please make sure this goes out. I can't think enough. My comrade Ben, my comrade Andrea, my comrade Natasha, True Black, you came and picked up the ball and you've been running with it, you've been championing it, you've been beating that drum of freedom for us. I thank you. I thank all the people at IDOC, Watch, Nick, Little John Faulkner, Jock. I love you all. Thank you. I mean, because this is where I'm drawing my strength from now. I'm drawing it from y'all. And so, without y'all having a sense of empathy to reach inside this dark belly of the beast and shining your light, it would be no hope for me. You know?
Yeah.
So I just thank everyone.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Yeah, well, I know we got 1 minute, so I just want to thank you for calling in. We still gonna hold you down. I'm sorry there was some technical difficulties at the beginning, but I think people could hear the second half of that much better. So again, I want everybody to sign those letters. Get on the email list, and just figure out ways you can get involved. Like you said, this is bigger than him. But again, thank you, Naeem, for calling in. Love you to death. Appreciate it. And I sent you a letter, man. I don't know if it came through, but hopefully it comes through. But I'll talk to you.
I got it. You know what? I got your letter today.
Okay, good.
Good.
Yeah,
I got it today, and I will respond to it over the weekend. I got 2 days of work left.
Okay.
I'm in training now, so I will respond most definitely to you. Thank you for reaching in here with letters, and I can use other letters of support. Please give them my contact.
Thank you for using GTL.
Yeah, that's the reality of this.
Now that's like hearing that guy. That's a real soldier right there, because he gone through unimaginable pain, and in this conversation, he's still talking about like let's don't forget about the other people who've gone through a lot of pain and suffering as well. Let's talk about. He's talking about solutions. Despite everything the system thrown at him, you still see the will to fight. That's incredibly inspiring. Incredibly inspiring.
And in addition to that, his clear understanding that it's the state that is the enemy of Black folks and poor folks, and the abolishment of prisons, which of course will only happen with a challenge to the state, a direct challenge to the state. For him to stand up strong and to say that most people who have lawyers and representation, whether they're political or not, they're often trying to tell you to say the least amount possible, to not use political language, to talk about how you should be asking for forgiveness, sorry for what took place. Those are the pressures that are constantly put on people who commit political acts. And to see him still at a space where he's defying that, fighting back, standing strong, I think it just goes to show you what kind of person that he is. I mean, even the mere telling of the story of someone who has, I think you said 2 months before he was about to
3
get
months
out of prison.
Yeah.
And that for him to do what he did and risk it all and give it up and give it all up basically to save someone's life. I mean, that is a strong human being that needs to be supported and held up high.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I'm sorry that didn't all come through. Well, I'm gonna post I'll do it at the end. I'll have me and Nick will put the Black Miss podcast in both of the show notes so people can hear him talk much longer, because I talked to him for about 45 minutes or something like that, so you can hear his overall views on the world. But I think even just a little bit we heard was definitely inspiring, because again, I mean, it's tough to keep it going out here, and we got way more freedom, than he does. And again, like you said, Kamal, it was great that, or like both of y'all noted, he didn't just point it to himself. He understood that there was a state. He understood that, that's where the war needs to really be waged. Like you said earlier, Nick, we'll celebrate when people get out, and as we should celebrate when anyone gets out of prison, but we should never confuse that as being like that's the win, that's the ultimate win. You know what I mean? Like they took one of our soldiers and locked them up for 50 years, and that's what we're celebrating more than anything. We should celebrate that, but we should also see that as an indictment of the very thing that we're up against. The fact that you can lock somebody up for 50 years for standing up and make them an example, and then release them when they're frail and when they can barely talk and when they can't form thoughts anymore. They're not at the peak of their powers, so to speak. You know, like that's very much what they do. I want to shout out a few other things. Again, sign the letter if you're watching, or if you're watching later, sign the letter. Also, there's a documentary in the link tree that that one of our comrades made. King Trill made a documentary, and we're going to be doing some screenings on that as well. And you can watch a documentary about what occurred. So we'll give you the documentary as well as those podcast episodes. Those are actually in the Freedom Campaign, or in the link tree link as well. And then I do want to tell the story one more time, just because I know some people weren't here at the beginning. So I do want people, just like if you came in and you heard him talking, I just want to tell the story one more time so people have some context as to like why that was moving and why we were touched by that. So once again, February 1st, 1985, there was an uprising in what is now understood as Pendleton Prison. At the time, it was called Indiana Reformatory Prison. Prior to that date, there had been plenty of, as Naeem noted, he had been choked by prisoners. There had been plenty of beatings and just inhumanities that had occurred against the prisoners inside there. So finally, things came to a head. But as he said, this was not a retaliation, right? So the guards started this, and the guards were part of a group, as he noted, called the Sons of Light. The Sons of Light were a KK splinter group. We have this Michael Richardson in a deposition who worked at the prison, who was not part of that crew, talks about how they would try to recruit you into this group when you started to work there, and how their family members, their kids would play with the Klan robes, like the children play with the robes of the Klan, and these are the people who ran that prison here in Indiana. So on that day, Lincoln Love, the comrade that they saved, they were quote unquote flipping cells, the guards, and they had already been through his area, so this didn't make any sense. And he was being harassed, like many of them were, and they were demanding cleaning supplies. So they were banging on his cell because they weren't getting cleaning supplies. So they come to check his cell, but they don't just check his cell. They come and they tear gas the cell, they handcuff him, and then they beat him with illegal billy clubs. Multiple guards rushed into his cell. He's in the maximum restraint unit. Balagoon, not the brother who called, but the co-defendant of this case, the second half of the Pendleton 2, had just so happened to be around the area because he was a lay advocate. Lay advocates in prison often are there as support systems for other prisoners, will speak to their good behavior and so on and so forth, and also just help with their legal cases. Lokmar, or Lincoln Love, was also a jailhouse lawyer too. So Balagoon had heard, like, because the prisoner was like, yo, go get Balagoon. They're killing us in here. They're killing us in here. They're killing us in here. So Balagoon went to see what was going on, to check on Lincoln Love after the guards had beat him down, dragged him out face down, and said, the rest of y'all are next. Like, again, this is all documented in the interview that I talked to both of them on. Once this happened, Balagoon went and got other people, including Naeem, who you all just heard, and they were part of a group called the Black Dragons that was organizing prisoners to stop fighting amongst each other and fight against the racist prison guards. And this is another reason why, and Lincoln Love was in this group, this is another reason why they targeted them, because they were ending the infighting and actually like organizing the prisoners against the conditions inside the prison. So they go, Balagoon gets Naeem, they bring a group of people, they come to the captain's office at the time that they thought where Lincoln Love was, and they said they thought he was behind this curtain, and he was bleeding, and normally it was signaled if you're behind the curtain. That's usually when they let people die. So they try to get in. The guards wouldn't let them in. I actually believe Michael Richardson, when I read the deposition, was one of these guards, but the guards wouldn't let them in. So then a struggle breaks out, and they have to force their way in because they want to see if the man is still alive or not. They're trying to save his life. He's not in there. He's in another part of the prison, the infirmary. They head to the infirmary. This is where the guards had the shotgun, and this is where the guards surrounded them or ready to kill them. So they were armed with their own self-made weapons. And as the guards attacked them, they fought back, and they said the order was to kill them. They thought they were going to die. So they were defending in their minds, not just in their minds, in reality, they were defending their lives. As they were trying to muscle their way out, Balagoon actually gets trapped. Naeem, who was just on the phone, takes a guard hostage so Balagoon can get back through the door to get inside the cell house. And then they take a few other hostages and go inside the cell house, and they occupied the cell house for about 15 hours or so. And they released a series of demands, including sanitary conditions, no reprisals. I'm trying to have more black guards. They wanted an investigation, the whole nine. Actually, there was a federal suit against some of these guards, and they were actually found guilty of civil rights violations. So this is also on note as well. But anyway, they called the media. They released these demands. They actually protect the guards. Like Naeem talks about this, how if they wanted to take out the guards, could have done it. So the fact that Naeem got an attempted murder charge doesn't make any sense, because if you have guards for 15 hours under your control, if you want to kill them, you know what I'm saying? They actually protected the guards from other prisoners who wanted to do that. Eventually, they negotiate their release, and then Naeem and Balagoon were sentenced to the most years out of everybody else because there were other prisoners involved. And then Naeem, who you just heard, got 142 years, and then Balagoon got 84 years. And then Naeem spent, and again, Naeem only had 3 months, and Balagoon only had about 3.5 years. So only reason Naeem was even there, I'm just remembering so much stuff. Only reason Naeem was even there in that level of a prison was because he was a Marine. He actually didn't commit a crime that was even of that level. They put him there because they thought he was a danger because of the skill set that he had. That's the only reason he was in that prison. Because I think he was only in there for theft or something of that nature. So they go to trial. It's an all-white jury. There was like a black alternate. And the county that they were in, Madison County, again, I don't live far from here because, again, this is all Indiana, or far from there. It's about 40% black. So the fact there was no black folks on the jury is just bullshit. The judge and the prosecutor openly fraternized with the jurors. And anytime that their defense tried to implement any of this evidence that I just laid out, none of it was allowed in. The fact that Lincoln Love got beat up, they didn't even want to allow that in. Like they didn't even want, they only wanted to deal with the incident itself, or the actual fight itself. They didn't want to deal with any of that, to the state of mind, any of that. They didn't let any of that in. The state of the prison prior to that day, the fact that even when they would talk, they actually talked to Michael Richardson, again, the guy who exposed the Sons of Light. They didn't want to talk about any of the racism that happened. None of that was allowed into evidence. The judge agreed and the prosecutor pushed back that all of that was irrelevant. So they didn't get a fair trial, if there's such a thing anyway. And then after that, again, they were sentenced to 142 and 84 years, and they spent 20 and 30 plus years, respectively, in solitary confinement. And there's other information. Again, I would just say listen to the interview, but just wanted people to hear that story. And then one last point that I talked about at the beginning, Naeem, who you just heard, had his sentence vacated in 2018 by a judge, and that judge was removed from the bench and replaced with another judge. It was Judge Dudley who vacated it, and then Judge Carroll who was put in place. Judge Carroll comes in, resentences him to 122 years, and says, "I had to look out for my brothers." That was the line. And again, IDOC Watch. Look up IDOC Watch. They have done the best in documenting all of this. Like, they're the only organization that's like consistently updated these cases. And this is where I, when I came into the fold, this is where I got a lot of the information from at first. And all of this is documented. So we're trying to pressure the judge and the prosecutor, but we also understand that the legal route is limited. And really we're just exhausting that as a part of a larger plan. So those letters will help. But also this just needs to be known by way more people, so we can bring the ultimate pressure. Because this is it's a small county. This is not a place that has, like, Anderson is a city, I don't even think of 40,000 people. So if they started getting rushed, they wouldn't know what to do. so so we want to bring more attention to it. And just the fact that there's been a very long history of racism and white supremacist activity, not just among prisoners, but among guards throughout the state of Indiana, and obviously throughout the entire country or the entire colony, but particularly in Indiana, there's a long history in Puttinsville and so forth of white supremacist guards, running the prisons, and IDOC turning a blind eye to it, so to speak. So we can close out soon, but I just wanted people to hear that story again, because I'm sure a lot of people came in after and didn't hear it. So if y'all can respond however you feel.
Yeah, I just want to add, this is just another example of what I talk about all the time on my show. Everything that this country claims they're enemies of, they claim China and Russia are a crazy authoritarian states that hold political prisoners. That is literally what we have. That is the United States. There are a lot of people that think we have a Bill of Rights. There are a lot of people that think that this is a country of law and order. We are a country that has a caste system. If you're wealthy, especially if you're white and wealthy, you are treated completely different than the political prisoners that we're talking about right now. So this is just another unfortunate case that is very heartbreaking. But we need to allow it to radicalize us, and this is why there's no excuses to keep this criminal justice system in place. But that was kind of my last thoughts. I'm gonna pass back to Combo and Two Black.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I would say to wrap up for me is, again, I mean, this is an incredible story that needs to get more light shined on it, that needs to get more people activated around it. Again, what these brothers did is basically sacrifice their life to save somebody else's life. And they've done so and maintained their dignity, their understanding of their right to self-defense, their understanding their right to their humanity and to protect their humanity, their right to fight back, as said. All of that is encompassed in this case. And even more than that is the fact that these brothers, again, acknowledge that it is the state, through the way it operates by setting up these situations where you have these white supremacist gangs, where you isolate and you have gang violence on gang violence. And that's a method of them controlling a prison where the guards themselves belong to gangs, where they bring drugs in. This is not a place of rehabilitation. This is a place of torture, and this is a place of violence. And that when people are able to survive with their humanity, the state thinks the next answer is to crush that humanity. And it's going to be up to us outside of the prison walls to do something, to be in alignment and to be comrades to the folks who are on the front line fighting those battles, as we continue to fight the battles out here in the streets and in our neighborhoods and our communities. So it's a pleasure to share space with both of you. It's a pleasure to share space and to talk about this case. And hopefully we've got some more signatures signed and we can get some more things done to support these folks who are locked down.
Yeah, definitely. If you haven't, if you're listening or you're watching, sign the signature. Everybody's obviously not watching. Everybody who watches this isn't watching it currently. So for people who are going to see this later, please sign. It might seem small, but that's one way of getting involved. If you have contacts, for those who might have them, if you have contacts and bigger media connections, we have plenty of stuff written up to send out. If anyone wants to cover this in larger publications that sees this, please reach out to me. Please reach out to anybody that you see on here, and we'll figure that, and we can get that information for you. So if you are interested in covering it in that way, whether that's podcast, TV, I don't really care. Whatever gets the information out there. But understand ultimately, we're trying to, expose the contradictions of the state here. So we're not interested in some human interest story just to talk about rehabilitation or something. We ultimately want to, deal with the situation for what it is, but we'll take any help we can get. So I want to thank Nick and Revolutionary Blackout Network for giving us this space to share this with a different platform. I know we put this together kind of on the whim, just because of the seriousness of the man's case. But thank y'all for laboring through that and giving us this platform.
And I just want to say real quick, if you're watching the RBN stream, make sure you guys subscribe to Black Power Media if you haven't already. You guys are going to see a lot more of the collaborations because I love the work they do. And I feel like the Black left, especially the Black anti-establishment left, we need, well, the Black community at whole, but especially us that fight the system, we need to lock hands. We need to unify. So make sure you guys subscribe to Black Power Media. And it's not the last time you guys going to see these collaborations.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll be back to talk about my essay one day. So yeah, but because I was on there a few weeks ago. But yeah, thank y'all for listening. Peace out and sign that letter.